Welcome to Seggs Talk Radio, a podcast that explores kink and sex through candid and curious conversations. Join me and expert guests in exploring taboos and unpacking what it means to be sex and kink positive. Go check out our new website, sextalkradio.com. That is SEGGS talkradio.com. And I hope you enjoy the episode.
If I look at my whole life, it's always been there. I've always been fascinated by sex and fascinated by people not wanting to talk about it, but the fact that like it governs everything. You know, we're in a very puritanical culture, and yet like, we sell everything with somebody's abs or somebody's tits.
Truly.
Like, sex is everywhere, but yet we won't talk about it. So I think it's always been there.
I want to introduce you guys to Aria, which is a groundbreaking intimacy concierge service for couples. It can help you deepen and explore your relationship and energize it through curated experiences called scenes. I recently received the Sense scene, which was all about sensory play and pleasure mapping with my partner. It came with a premium pinwheel toy, a finger vibrator, and a satin blindfold, as well as a really good custom curated playlist. I had so much fun exploring this scene. If you're ready to spice it up with Aria, go to arya.fyi/STR for 15% off today. This episode of Seggs Talk Radio is brought to you by the HUD app. The HUD app is changing the face of modern and casual dating by giving users a really fun and flirty interface, and also it has bedroom features where you can select all of the kinky and naughty things you're into and show those to potential future partners. I personally love using the HUD app, and I think it's a great system for finding kinky people near you. Go to hudapp.com/sextalk. That is HUDAPP.com/SEGGS talk TALK for more. Not everyone wants a purple sparkly dildo, so when Peep Show Toys reached out to me and sent me their line of the Solina hyper-realistic, body-safe, platinum-grade silicone dildos, I was super excited. When I say they are realistic looking, I'm serious. They are very hyper-realistic. They are soft on the outside, they are firm on the inside, and they have a suction on the bottom for hands-free play if that's what you are into. Go to peepshowtoys.com and use code SEX, SEGGS, for 10% off of your entire order. When I started optimizing my life around my menstrual cycle, everything changed for the better. That is why I love the Stardust app. It is far more than a period tracker. It is an entire hormonal health universe inside of an app. I've been using it for quite a while now, and what I love the most is the beautiful design. I love that I can share my cycle with a friend or with a partner. I get customized notifications, and I've learned so much about my cycle and about hormones. So wherever you get your apps, search for the Stardust app, and I look forward to your thoughts. Okay. Yay. Hi. Welcome to Seggs Talk Radio. Brandon Kyle Goodman. I have been Googling your name so many times to like do all my digging.
Yes.
And I love your full name, first of all. I keep Googling it. It's like one name in my mind.
Yes.
And what I adore about you is like every time I Google you, there's new stuff. Like there's new niches and categories and things you've done. And like, I don't know. I love multifaceted people.
Come on, we don't multi-hyphenate.
Yes. So you are podcaster, author, voice actor, actor.
Yes.
Podcast host. I think I already mentioned that one.
Writer,
what else do you have? Writer.
TV writer.
Yes. So much.
Show, all the things.
I love that.
Yeah.
So tell me what you're up to in New York right now.
I'm in New York because I am workshopping my new stage show. So I'm doing a stage show that'll be at Ars Nova at the end of this year in September, October.
Okay.
Called Ho Church, spelled H-E-A-U-X, the fancy ho.
Yes, the fancy ho.
And it's just basically, it's an exploration of, I grew up a pastor's kid. So it's an exploration of what church was to me, what I've created church to be, using puberty stories and, you know, sexual liberation stories, family stories, just to be like, how do you rebuild a church in yourself?
I love that.
Yeah.
I find a lot of my guests, there is like a church to kink pipeline.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And like, you know, where there is repression, I think there is this eroticization. I don't think that's a word. But like, there's a pipeline there. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I always say pastors' kids are the horniest. We are fucking sluts.
Oh my gosh. Where did you grow up again?
I grew up in Queens. I grew up East Elmhurst, like not too far from LaGuardia Airport.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I went to boarding high school in Rome, Georgia.
Whoa.
Culture shock. And then I came
back
to
religious?
Yes, they were religious, actually. We had like a chapel on campus. We had like chapel Wednesdays. You had to go on Sundays. They they loaded our buses up to go into town. We
Mm-hmm.
had to pick a church. You would always try to
Pick a
pick the
church.
Catholic church because they got out quick.
Okay.
I was like,
Oh, it didn't
"Heck?"
even, was that the religion you grew up in?
Well, no, I
Or,
didn't. But
okay.
like you could pick which church you went,
Wow.
because basically in
Sounds
that town,
progressive.
it was kind
But
of,
like not.
you know, in that town they had like what I called a church mall. So basically in one part of
Wow.
town there were all these churches, and so they
Mhm.
would drop us off and you'd pick which church.
Pick your
And then
player.
the Catholic church was in a separate part,
Uh-huh.
but those kids always got back early.
There you go.
So I was like Catholic church. So I did a lot of that.
That's funny. I did not grow up religious. Both of my parents did, and I actually grew up in Alaska
Oh my
in a
God.
small town. And my only brush with religion was like they had free lunches that were better than our shitty high school
Oh my
lunch, and that's
God.
how that was like their recruiting methodology was
Was
like
better
get these.
lunch.
Yeah. So sometimes I would
You
go
got me.
eat like
Honestly. I like a good meal.
nachos at the church in Alaska. Like such a
Yes.
weird childhood.
Wait, what is the common misconception
Um,
of Alaska? Of like, what's the common misconception of growing up in
People
Alaska?
always ask me about the light, the
The light,
daytime, the
yeah.
darkness. Like, is it dark all winter? And it can be up very far north in Alaska, but where
Yeah.
I lived was not. I mean, it was extreme, but it was not like dark all for a
Okay.
month in the summer or in the winter. But in the summer, on the flip side of things, like it is bright out till like 1 a.m,
Oh
and it starts getting light
wow.
again at like 6 a.m.
Oh my
So
gosh.
like I have total like hippie outdoorsy parents, and so like going camping, it's just like light out.
Just oh my goodness.
So it is kind of
Wow.
extreme.
Yeah.
But I couldn't wait to get out of there.
Well, when
So
did you get out of Alaska? How long have you been in New York?
my trajectory was California for college,
Okay.
Northern California, Humboldt State.
Okay.
And I started a cannabis company, actually,
Okay.
as
My
one
kind of
does,
girl. There we
smoking
go.
weed in California.
Yes.
I took the company to LA, was there for a few years, sold the company, moved to Austin, Texas,
Yes.
and then just moved here 2 months ago.
Oh my God.
So I'm a baby.
You're a baby New Yorker.
Stressed out and overstimulated.
Absolutely, of course. Then you're right on target.
It's been a lot,
Yeah.
to be perfectly honest. But like, I found that all the people I wanted to interview and like
Yes.
my kinky BDSM community and sex educators, like they're
Yes.
all here.
New York and LA, pretty much.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, I don't want to generalize. A lot of them are here,
Yeah.
and I just wanted to be close to that.
I
So
love that. I
yeah,
love that.
yeah.
Well, welcome to New
thank you so
York.
much. So high school, or
Mhm.
you were talking about you went away for high school,
Yeah,
right?
I went
For
to boarding
boarding.
school in
Okay.
Rome, Georgia, like an
Okay.
hour outside Atlanta, 20 minutes from like the backwoods of Alabama. Very, very, very prep, white,
Yes.
straight lace, conservative vibes.
And what was going on in your relationship with religion and also sexuality as a
That's a great
teenager?
question. As a teenager, I was still pretty religious. You know, I think I was figuring out what it meant for me,
Sure.
but I was still like, you know, going to
Yeah.
church actively. And my mom, so we grew up in my grandmother's denomination. My grandmother's the pastor. So my mom grew up a PK. I grew up a PK. But when I was born, my mother started kind of searching for other types of worship. So
Wow, cool.
we were Buddhist for a little bit. We did like metaphysical
Oh my
teachings. We did,
God.
like she kind of like took me
Yeah.
all around. She found herself back in Christianity, but it
Mhm.
just kind of exposed me to other ways of worshiping. And so I've always just had a fascination with religion. Even like in history class, whenever you got to like Greek
Totally.
mythology or Egyptian ideology, it was like, oh my
Yeah.
God, I love this stuff.
Yeah.
But in high school, I was, you know, pretty standard. Went to Wednesday chapel, went to Sunday chapel, kind of, you know, followed the rules,
Mm-hmm.
dressed up in my little suit and my tie, you
Cute.
know, stood, sat down, stand, sit down, you know, the whole vibes.
Yep.
I didn't have like I probably wasn't until my 20s that I started having like I think a real visceral connection to spirituality.
Sure.
Where like I could feel it. But
Yeah.
up until then it was like by rote, I guess.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, my mom practices Tibetan Buddhism actually
Oh my God,
currently.
okay.
So I grew up exposed, to a lot of the like cool Buddhism and woo-woo stuff.
Yes.
And
I love that stuff.
you know, I had my era as a teen and young adult of being like, ugh, like so eye roll. And then
Sure.
now I'm coming back to it.
Listen, especially
So-
moving to New York, you're like, I need something.
I need God. I moved to New York and found God.
I need God. You need
Well,
something.
I'm sober from alcohol and
Okay, amazing.
in a 12-step program, and
Yeah.
they get a bad rap for like making it seem like you have to have a connection with like Jesus,
Sure.
but that's so not, it's literally a God of your
Yeah, just
understanding,
like a
higher power of your
yes.
understanding. And so I've been really focused on that lately. And I'm like, yeah, it can mean so many different
It can
things.
mean
And
so many
and
things.
it's literally whoever you envision to be out there when you're like in a shitty spot asking for help.
Yeah.
So
I now use the term for myself. I call it AUG, AUG.
uh-huh.
So when I'm praying to God, it's ancestors, universe,
Ooh.
God. So it's just like
Yes.
all encompassing, like whatever, you know, whoever the ancestors are, whether they're your direct blood or,
Yeah.
you know, people that you grew up loving, you know, the universe, the stars, the galaxy,
Totally.
and whatever God is, you know,
Yeah.
capital G, lowercase g, just
Definitely.
like it's energy.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
People are gonna be like, I'm here for the gangbang discussions. And we want you to start manifesting and studying metaphysics.
Yes. Metaphysics. Yes.
So yeah, tell me about your journey with sexuality. Were you exposed to any type of sex education?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, my show goes into this. My
great.
first sex education experience was 12th grade.
Which is like what, senior?
Oh, sorry, not 12th grade.
Oh, okay. Age 12.
I was age 12,
Okay.
so it was 7th grade.
Okay.
And so that was
like it's too late if
it was
you're
too
a
late.
senior.
Yeah. Like now? No.
Yeah.
7th grade. And we literally walked into the classroom. It was empty. Our homeroom was empty. Our teacher wasn't in there. And on the front desk was like a wooden shaft. And no one had told us what that was or what was happening. So we all walk in, a bunch of like 12-year-olds being like, that looks like a dick.
Yeah,
what is that?
yeah,
Like, why is that on the desk? And then my homeroom teacher came in with a nurse, and he was like, this is the nurse. They're going to teach you about sex. And basically, they just taught us how to put a condom on. And that was kind of it. It was like, so you put a condom on, and then she was out. We were like, okay, bet.
That really is the gist of
that is
high school
it.
sex ed.
Yeah, there's like no pleasure. It's not female-centered. It's not vulva-centered.
No.
It's not queer-centered. It's
No.
just kind of like, please don't have a baby.
Totally. And like be afraid.
And be scared. Yeah. And then when I went to this boarding school in Georgia, that was mostly, it was a health class, but they eventually separated the boys from the girls. And then that became about abstinence. And then
I was
also
just
like
gonna say,
yeah, it was
if
mainly
it was
like
religious
God,
focused.
abstinence. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was like put a condom on. But again, it was like that was the extent of it. There was no the thing that always gets me is like there's no focus on pleasure. And also I said this, no focus on consent. Like, which I find so, my mother would always be like, you know, as a kid, just like no means no. People say stop, you stop, like very much.
Yeah.
Which as a kid, you're downloading that and you're like, all right, cool. As an adult, I'm like, all right, my mother, this Black woman is like raising a boy and is like, make sure you know these things.
Totally.
But it's so fascinating that like that wasn't part of the sex ed curriculum.
Right.
Like that's a huge.
And it still isn't.
It still isn't. And
yeah.
That's a huge, like,
terrifying.
enthusiastic consent and like asking people in communication. And like, why is that? Like, teach me about communication and taxes in school. Like, what?
Oh, God. Oh, no, they don't want us to.
They don't want us to.
They don't want us to know that shit.
Yeah.
For me, with ongoing consent, especially exploring like kink and BDSM, if I'm playing with a partner that's less experienced than me, what I always tell people is like, you can make it sexy. Like you can make consistent check-ins as you're being intimate with somebody very hot. Like even just, do you like how that feels? Would you like more or less? Like, I think that sometimes with a less experienced partner, they don't even know how to necessarily express where they're at in the process. So just saying like, would it feel better if it was more or less pressure or whatever it is?
Yes.
And then you also get to enable that person to use their voice and practice that. And it's like, ongoing consent stuff can be hot.
It can be really.
It's not
I find it sexy because I always want to. I'm turned on by my partner.
Yes, the validation too.
So I love the validation. I love to be able to do what makes you feel sexy.
1000%.
So that continuous conversation and consent is like so hot to me, and I wish that more it was framed that way more. That it's not just like a by rote thing. It's like this is part of sex. Honestly, yeah.
So when did you come out as queer?
I came out as queer in college. So it was my freshman year. My roommate is bisexual. And I was like struggling. And he basically said, it was the greatest gift he could have given me because he was like, you don't have to tell anyone, just like explore and like, you know, explore with girls, explore with boys, do your thing. And then if at the end of the school year you feel one way or the other, then you are. And it was the most beautiful gift. That's what I did. I spent my freshman year kind of exploring with different people.
Sure.
And as they say at NYU, gay by May. And it was truly.
Said what?
Gay by May is like the NYU.
Oh.
Theater. Like they'll be gay by May. So May did come and I was like, oh, I think I am a homosexual. Actually, I came out first as bisexual, and I always tell this,
Yeah.
which is, because there's a lot of biphobia, and I like to make sure
Yes.
that we step out that bisexuality is real.
Same.
But sometimes for some queer folks who end up deciding or discovering that they're homosexual,
Yeah.
bisexuality is this, how do I want to say it? Like a bridge that you use because you're like, I'm still trying to hold on to
For
something
sure.
or still trying to figure things out, and
Yeah.
it feels like a safe space.
Of course.
But I want to make sure that it's very clear that bisexuality
Right.
is
And then
its
that
own
can be
sexual
turned
orientation.
around by whether it's straight people, or I think what I've heard too is other queer men in the
Yes,
community
yes.
as, oh, it's always just a stepping stone or
Yes,
bridge.
yes. Will and Grace has some jokes like that too, like, and which, you think about where you learn about sex. Like
Yes.
there were a lot of gay men making jokes about
We were talking about this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Will and Grace for you is friends for me. And then like
Yes.
realizing all these innuendos.
Yes.
And I've been rewatching a few different shows from the 90s right now. And I'm like, oh, there's some deeply homophobic shit in here.
Yes.
Like, because in Friends, Ross's ex-wife is with a woman.
Yes, yes, yes.
And oh my God, the lesbian jokes are just, they never
nonstop,
stop.
nonstop. Yeah, you're like, oh, these were the punchlines.
Yes, they
when
were.
You start to like
Yeah.
look at it, you're like, oh, the homophobia, the transphobia, the fat phobia, like those were the punchlines
Right.
of a lot of those 90s
Yes.
sitcoms.
So we've come a little ways.
Yes, a little ways.
But I
yes.
mean, I even find like there's very few out bisexual or heteroflexible men just on the internet space.
Yeah.
They exist.
Yes.
They're just, there's not a lot of them. And
There's not a lot of representation.
I would definitely want it to be a safe space for them in all the different communities.
Absolutely.
I see a lot of heteroflexible men on Field, the dating app.
Okay.
And I've shared about this a little bit before, is that unfortunately a lot of the men that are just kind of curious and dabbling have never heard of PrEP, like literally have not heard about it.
Yeah.
And so that's like something that I'm very passionate about, the STI space.
Yes,
and
please.
like, I just have a concern about that. Like, we need to educate. Like, I'll ask a guy who explores with men sometimes if he's on PrEP and he hasn't heard of it. And I'm like,
yeah, you're like,
we got to talk.
we all need to talk about PrEP.
Yeah.
STIs are there's still such a stigma, even inside of sex positive spaces.
Definitely.
I still find a stigma, and I'm
Yeah.
I like to talk about, like, when I get tested, I like to post about it.
Same.
Just to like
Yeah.
try and like destigmatize
Not a
it.
big
Like,
deal.
it's not a big deal. Like, if you're gonna play, this is
Yep.
gonna be a part of it. Get
Yeah.
tested. Get
And if I
treated.
post about it, people are like, oh, thanks for the reminder. Like, I literally
Yes.
have been putting that off or
Yes.
whatever it is.
I know. I like make my appointments. Like, it's like every 2 months, every 3
Yep.
months. Like, just go.
Yeah.
I would rather. I always like this about everything. I'm like, I would rather know so I can
Yes.
treat the thing and take care of the thing.
Definitely.
Than like be, procrastinating.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so college, exploring. When did this passion for sexual health and education and
Ooh.
sex positivity start weaving in?
I think that if I look at my whole life, it's always been there. I've always been fascinated by sex
Me
and
too.
fascinated by people not wanting to talk about it. But the fact that like it governs everything,
Yes.
we're in a very puritanical culture, and yet
Right.
like, we sell everything with somebody's abs or somebody's tits.
Truly.
Like, sex is everywhere, but
Yes.
yet we won't talk about it. So I think it's
Yes.
always been there. But when I really dove deep into it was writing for Big Mouth. So
Yeah.
Big Mouth is such a sex positive show, but
Yeah.
being in that writer's room, you're spending 8 hours a day talking about
Wow.
bodies and
Yes.
sex and puberty.
Yes.
And it becomes so normal that
Uh-huh.
like when you go out into the world and you start talking about dicks, people are like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Oh, my bad. Like, I've just been
Right.
literally doing that.
Talking
So,
about this all day.
yeah, but there was something healing about it. I mean,
Mm.
before I even joined the show, I remember watching it and being like, oh my goodness, this is giving language to all of the trauma that happened in puberty.
Oh, wow.
You just never,
Yeah.
if you don't go back and like look at something to
Right.
heal it, it just runs you. So like all the traumas that we've experienced in our childhood and our teenage years, if you don't actually go back and look at it and say,
Right.
oh, what was that?
Yeah.
Then you're actually still operating from those
Definitely.
traumas. And so
Mhm.
watching Big Mouth and being like, oh, that's what that was. Oh, now it just started to like heal me.
Yeah.
And then being able to join that writer's room was also healing. I was like, oh, there's something here.
Yes.
So when the pandemic happened, and I was doing a lot of stuff around race and identity and
For the show?
intersectionality. Not for the
Or-
show, but
okay.
just in general.
Yeah.
George Floyd and
Yeah.
Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery. And so I was talking online about it.
Yeah.
And then, the allyship fatigue, which, clearly here we are in another era of Trump. But I was like, I need to get online and like find some joy, because joy is part of our resistance. So I asked people to tell me something good or something messy.
Is that where messy came
That's
from?
where Messy Mondays came from. And people were at home, so they were horny.
Yeah.
So
isolated,
horny. And so that's what people started to write in.
Yeah.
And we were still on the Zoom working on the show.
Right.
And so it was just feeding into each other. And I think the way that I was receiving people's submissions without shame and judgment was freeing them and was freeing me. And so it just became this, like, I was like, oh, this is the space that I want to be in.
Yes, definitely. I really relate to what you said about like kind of being perplexed by people not wanting to talk about it. I think I've always had a little bit of a fascination with that as well, and want to poke with it a little bit, you know?
Yes.
And I mean, what I find is like, if I say, even today, getting my makeup done at Sephora, I'm like, she's like, oh, well, what's your podcast about? Because I look kind of like buttoned up and conservative, and I'm like, oh, it's about sex. And she's like, let's talk. Like, everyone wants to jump in. And before I know it, she's telling me about her, you know, experiences with other women, and just like, it's just being the permission slip to talk about sex. People are actually like dying, like craving it. They want to so bad.
Yes. When you give them the opportunity that they want to talk about it, or they want to hear about it at the very least.
Definitely. I know, it's my voyeuristic. Somebody mentioned something about audio voyeurism, and I was like, oh, sure. Like I like to listen to naughty stuff.
Yes, absolutely.
What were some of the themes that you got with your submissions, or I'm trying to think during the pandemic too. So were these people that weren't having sex?
People who weren't having sex, but like were like, this is what they missed about sex, what they
like, or a specific fantasy or
experiences. And then also, like, I think it really took off because people were asking about, you know, sucking dick, and I gave them my dick sucking tip.
Oh my God.
Which then they coined the Brandon Kyle Goodman Yawn, and they put it on Urban Dictionary.
Oh, congrats. So, that's an achievement.
That's definitely, I'm like, that's the Tony Award.
When you made it. Right.
So it really started with like, oh, let me show you how to give a better blowjob. And then that, you know, people like really took to that. And so it's just like giving more tips, more advice. And you're like, oh, right. No one actually formally, to go back to the sex ed class, it was like, how do you put a condom on? And that's it. No one talks to you about like, how do you, you know, suck a nipple?
People are deeply afraid of giving a bad blowjob too. And so I think people like young adults like avoid it because they literally don't want to.
They don't want to. They don't know. You're like, no one talks about fingering. No one talks about eating ass, or, you know, it's like, oh yeah, no one formally walks you through any of these things.
Nope.
They just kind of tell you, put a condom on and like, you know, don't have a baby.
What's funny about the blowjob thing is, so my 4th episode of the podcast was a blowjob expert came on, and that is what got us viral. It was like 40,000 followers in a week, like overnight, because her tips were actually accurate. So it hit man Instagram, which usually I'm scared of, but it was like everyone being like, oh, she's correct. So it worked well.
I love that.
What is the yawn? If you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, the yawn, basically it's like,
get yourself
like,
ready.
You lift that soft palate, right? So that you're opening, and then you're able to get that dick further back. So it's for me, it's like when
supports the gag reflex.
So it's just like, it's the thinking about yawning when you suck. It will get that dick further back, and you will be able to do all the tricks.
Oh my God, that's so funny that the blowjob was kind of what boosted us.
Everyone wants to know how to give a blowjob.
Yes, they do.
They really do.
Some of her tips are like hand-mouth coordination.
Oh, sure.
Extra lubrication.
Absolutely.
I think there's too many dry blowjobs happening.
No, we want to drink some water. We get it on.
What was that? I was just listening to something in your podcast. You were talking about dry. What were you talking about?
Dry everything. Dry dick pics.
Yes. Can we?
Please stop sending us dry dick pics. You must moisturize your dick before you send that picture over. This
sounds like is this a white boy thing?
It's a white boy thing. It's a white boy thing. It's a brown boy thing. Please, everybody, just like, please.
Even the whole body. I mean,
the whole body.
Just be a little shiny.
Just at least.
A little shiny.
If you're gonna take that photo, I do not want to see your dry dick. Please.
It's like, it's hard to even articulate, but you can tell. You can tell if you have not moisturized. I mean, for me, what's more important than anything is like, I'm looking at the aesthetics of where you live.
Yes.
Like
I want to know where you took that picture at. Yeah. What's happening? What kind of mirror is that? Absolutely.
Exactly. I'm a little bit of a size queen, which I don't judge, so I hate to admit it, but it's tied to my arousal.
Yeah.
So I like to get a picture, you know, on a dating app, so I know what I'm working with. And like, I swear, like a dick pic or a photo Guys like to send like photos in the mirror with their face kind of blocked. And I'm like,
Sure.
I can gauge your entire lifestyle from this bathroom. Like,
Just so you know. Oh
seriously.
my God. I know those bathrooms can be horror stories. Whenever I go into a bathroom I can tell if a boy's a top or a bottom based off of that bathroom.
Oh, sure. There you go.
Because, you know, if that bathroom
tidy,
has never been cleaned,
yeah,
you're like, oh, you don't douche in here.
Oh
You're
God. Yeah. Here's a little secret about those couples that can't keep their hands off of each other. They know that intimacy requires intention. What I love about Aria is that you're getting a custom intimacy expert in your back pocket that is helping design custom fit scenes for you and your partner to bring your fantasies to life and help make sex talk that much easier. Just take one quick quiz and they will handle everything from expert guidance to premium products discreetly delivered. Visit arya.fyi/STR for 15% off. If you are watching or listening to this, you're probably interested in sex and or kink and are curious about finding new partners to explore things with. However, it can be difficult to find those people. The thing I love about the HUD app is that it's more than just an app. They have a community, a podcast, and a ton of education. And inside of their app is a bedroom feature, so you can select all of the things you're interested in, all of the things you want to try, all the things you don't want to try, and that can be shown to potential future partners. So to learn more, go to hudapp.com/sextalk. That is hudapp.com/sextalk, SEGGSTALK. Look, I am a vibrator girl through and through. However, I think it's really fun and important to bring in an element of penetration to solo or partnered play. That is why I'm excited to share with you guys the Solina line of hyper-realistic dildos brought to you by Peep Show Toys. They are a line of 3 different sizes of super realistic dual density silicone dildos. Not only do they feel and look extremely realistic, but on the inside you have a thicker, more dense silicone, so it really does feel like a real erection. Get 10% off of your entire order at peepshowtoys.com using code SEX, SEGGS. My entire life changed when I started tracking my hormones and my menstrual cycle more closely. That's what I love about the Stardust app is it's far more than a period tracker. It is an entire hormonal health universe inside of an app. It is beautifully designed, it is fun, it is hilarious, and it is extremely educational. It has helped me redefine a relationship with my cycle that makes it much more lighthearted, and it's extremely helpful as you go through the month. Wherever you download your apps, go and search for the Stardust app, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts. So currently you are married and you have a boyfriend, and I would love to chat about your exploration of polyamory and multiple partners. And I mean, that might look like going back in time a little bit as well on your journey.
I'll say this, polyamory is not for the weak.
For sure.
It is a lot of conversation, a lot of checking in, a lot of navigating, and a lot of willing to get things wrong. I say for me, and I'll talk about how I got here, but kind of the my over rule, which is, you know, you want to over communicate, you want transparency over honesty, and dumb questions over no questions. So yeah, communication over no communication, transparency over honesty, and dumb questions over no questions are, which I think is like for everything, but especially in polyamory. But my husband and I, we've been together for 10 years in June. And we've been open and non-monogamous for about 6 of those years. So we started monogamous, and he was kind of like, I'll never be open, and I didn't push it, but I didn't have language for it. Like, if you think about 10 years ago,
I know
we weren't talking about this as openly. In fact, when we opened our relationship and we were put open on our Grindr, people would message us unprovoked to tell us how terrible that was, and like, you're just trying to cheat. Like, it was wild. People were just not.
I'm like, I don't feel like there's a whole lot of monogamous people on Grindr.
That's what I'm saying. I was like, it's like, and also I was like, we're saying that we're open,
right? So like, that was like too progressive for 6 years ago.
Absolutely, and so like now, like, you know, people, it's now an option you can choose. But we were getting a lot of tension, and so we kept it pretty private for a little bit.
Definitely,
just like let ourselves explore. And we also, it was like training wheels. Like, we started with, if you're out of town, then you can feel free to play. And then what started to happen was I just
need an emotional connection.
Yeah.
So I'm not able to just like
Super casual.
Yeah, like I can sometimes, but for
Right.
the most part, like I like to sit down and hang out. And if it's a good time, I'd like to repeat.
Right.
And so we like slowly change it to that, where it's like, okay, you can have repeat partners. And then I think as we were doing that, we started to have real connections with certain partners.
Yeah.
And so we started to think about like, well, what does polyamory look like? And this idea of wanting to be in relationships. So we were actually calling ourselves polyamorous before we had those relationships. We were like lightly exploring. He had a partner. I was dating somebody. And then about a year, how long has it been? It's been a year and a couple months ago, I met my boyfriend. And Matthew, my husband, had a partner as well. And my boyfriend had a partner, and Matthew's partner had two partners.
Polycules.
Polycule was there. And so it kind of worked, because what Matthew and I kind of discovered was when we are dating somebody who is single, we become their kind of anchor and
primary partner.
Yeah. And it becomes a little more difficult to fulfill those duties, because we also still have this marriage.
Yeah.
And you know, like it just like it gets a little complicated. And so we were like, well, let's date people who already have partners, because that's because everyone can balance that. Yeah. And then it just so happened that Matthew broke up with his partner, and then my boyfriend broke up with his partner. And so like now it's just
you can put the guardrails, but like
there, but like
shit happens.
It is what it is. And so it's just now the three of us. And even that has been like an adjustment. What does that look like? What does it now look like when I'm the kind of the sole
for two people,
because we're not a throuple. It's not the three of us dating. And so it's just like a lot of conversation, a lot of communication, a lot of checking in.
Yeah. Do you have a group chat?
We don't have, we do actually. We did because it came up for sad reasons, but in LA when the fires happened, we
for sure,
together. So then we were in a group chat together, and that was like polyamory, like a level that we were not ready for.
Yeah.
We were like not planning.
We're moving this to this level.
It's like
we're evacuating and a group chat.
Yes, it was like this is not what but so we did it. We evacuated together in a group chat, and they love each other. That's also a massive important thing, is that like partners loving each other and liking each other, even if they're not in a relationship together. But then I think what I was scared about whether or not they would like each other. And what I learned so quickly was like, well, these are partners that I picked. And
they both love you.
They both love me. And so like of course there's going to be elements that they will see in each other that they vibe with. And so it seemed to just like be this beautiful enmeshment.
Yeah.
And I, when Matthew's partner, I enjoyed him as well.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I see what you see in them. And so that was, always a lovely thing. But now we are just navigating what it is to be three, and and what it looks like to build a future. Because I started in this. I thought it was going to be monogamous. That's when I got married. We were monogamous, and now it's like, oh, that's not what this is anymore. And so now, allowing ourselves the space to explore what else it could be. The tricky thing being, we don't necessarily have examples, right? And so that's also part of it. Why I say you have to give yourself a lot of grace, and you have to be able to fuck up and say like, oh, my bad, let's repair this, because there isn't a blueprint. There's ethical slut, and that is its own version, but like it doesn't necessarily mean it looks like what's going to work for our union. And so it is just, if you don't like talking, polyamory is not for you. I'm going to say that.
Yeah, I think there has to be a lot of fluidity. And it's like also not to say that there isn't jealousy and like moments. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, I mean, there's jealousy that comes up from all of us at some point. But I think the key is being able to identify that it's not them doing something to you, because we all talk about things. And so everything you agree to, right? It's like, if I'm going to sleep over here, like we've all said, yes, I'm going to have that sleepover. If jealousy comes up when the sleepover happens, that's okay. But then we go, I'm not going to yell at you about that. I'm going to come to you and say, I felt a little jealous. Here's what was going on. And you realize that when you say it out loud, and you're validated and affirmed for it, it goes away. It's not that big a deal. And then it's like, okay, cool. Are there other guardrails we need to set here? Do we need more notice before a sleepover happens? Like, what are the things that might make you feel safer, might make you feel more comfortable? Jealousy isn't the enemy. Jealousy happens. Like,
in anything.
Yeah.
Jealousy is going to come up. It's not
Yes.
the enemy. It's actually, I think, a teacher. And so can you use it as a teacher as opposed to being afraid of it?
Right. I feel like polyamorous people need to get together collectively and write a book on
Yes.
communication and relationships.
Yes.
Because like, I feel like your average straight couple is just withholding,
all the
resentment,
time.
explosion.
Yeah.
Like it's such a different, outdated communication pattern that's happening, which is like your average straight couple. And it's, yeah.
Well, and the thing about it is that I find that
and monogamous couples.
and monogamous couples, but like, you know, but like you like see 20 years, 30 years into a relationship, now the relationship is crumbling because we just didn't talk.
Ever.
And it's like, oh, none of this was ever said. And it's like, oh yeah,
Right.
because we fall into, especially I will say for hetero couples, right? You fall, not your fault, by the way, not your fault, but we fall into our gender roles.
Definitely.
And so women are taught to not speak up. Men are taught that like they need to be taken care of. And so that dynamic keeps going and there's never any communication that says, I'm a person, you're a person. How do we make this equitable? Or I'm not happy right now, or I'm not satisfied, or I need this. And there's such a fear to say that because you're going to blow the relationship up.
Right.
But here's the deal. It's either going to blow up today or it's going to blow up 20 years from now.
If you and when it blows up 20 years from now, there's no saving it because there's so much animosity.
Yes. So you might as well say it in the moment, say the thing, and find a way to, I don't want to say fix it, but heal it, mend it, find what's going to work.
Totally.
Yeah.
I've found myself, I'm more like in a dom era. And like, I love flipping gender roles in that way.
Yes.
Like, I realized that I was shamed most of my childhood for being bossy. And women often hear bossy versus leader.
Yes.
And so now that I've like come full circle and embraced that, like as a dom and sometimes a paid dom, I'm like, this is so liberating because this is who I've always been. I've always been bossy, controlling, whatever the negative words are, but I've always just been like a leader and in charge.
There you go.
And I think it's so fun to find more submissive guys that are like, I've been waiting for a woman like this.
Yes.
Like we just completely flip everything.
Yeah.
Like my dream is to have like a stay-at-home husband. I'm like, let's flip all this
Let's
shit.
flip it all.
It's so fun.
Well, that's, I think the thing is like, who gave you this blueprint? This blueprint of like, this is what a man does, a woman does, this is what a relationship, this is monogamy. It's like that, somebody forced that blueprint on you and, you know, to take it to a little higher, like the powers that be are profiting off of that system.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
They're profiting
Big
off
time.
of you playing in your box and in your roles. But it's like, this is your life.
Yeah.
You got one of them. So if you want to be dom, if you want to stay at home, if you want, like, let's make it work. Let's co-create this relationship together as opposed to trying to do what our parents did or what our friends are doing. It's like, this is our relationship or our relationship. What do we want it to look like? Let's get what we want out of it.
That's a great pep talk. My God. Deserve to clap. Yeah. Wow. So you're kind of weaving all of this. Are you writing Ho Church?
Yes.
Okay.
So Ho Church, I wrote it.
Okay.
So we were this week just workshopping the script and then I'll go back and do some more
okay. I didn't
writing.
realize it was full. It was your baby.
It's my baby.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So you'll be here a bunch in the fall when it's when it's airing.
I get here like September 10th and then I'm here until like November 22nd or something.
Cool.
Like that.
That is so exciting.
Yeah.
I love a creative brain.
Yes.
I've never been somebody to operate like a corporate 9 to 5. Like I'm just
do it. I couldn't. My body got sick every time I was in one of those positions. My body literally responds to it, and I'm just like,
I need the excitement and the dopamine, like the positive dopamine of like a new creative,
the newness, the
outlet.
Creativity, the collaboration, using your brain in a way to build, and also taking all that you've been through and turning that into something like
beautiful.
giving it purpose.
Yeah. What year did you write your book?
Oh my goodness. My book came out, I think, in 22. Yeah.
Okay.
So I got the deal in at the top of 21.
Pandemic.
Yeah, pandemic.
It's going down.
Yeah. September 22.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes.
Where to find it?
So the book is called You Gotta Be You, How to Embrace This Messy Life and Step Into Who You Really Are. Messy being an acronym for healing. So M is, it's gonna be long, but make space to reflect curiously, easy on the judgment, surrender the things you cannot change, save the lessons you can move forward with. Your healing and your growth is your birthright. And so I use the book, it's part memoir, part self-help, basically exploring like what is it to live at the intersections of your identity and to embrace it. And so the governing question is, who would I be if society never got its hands on me?
Oof.
That's the question that like I take.
It's a big one. I got
chills. It's a big one. Yeah. And it's just like society tells you based off of your identity, your gender, your religion, your sexual orientation, that you have to do this and that, and you can't be this. And it's like, well, who would you be if society never told you anything? Who's the person you would show up as? What would you like? What would you love? What would you gravitate towards? And how do you get back to that? And I think that this book was, how do I get back to the version of myself that loved who I was before I was told that there was anything wrong, right? Because when you're a kid, when you're a toddler, you're not thinking about your body. You're not thinking about your race. You're not thinking about your sexual orientation.
You're not stopping to look in the mirror.
No,
it's not.
You're just like living. And then you turn on the show and it says, oh, your body is wrong. Oh, your religion is wrong. Oh, this is wrong. And then you start to adopt that. And I always use the example of the playground with my nose. I remember I love my nose, but I used to get made fun of for having a big nose. And I remember wanting to get surgery on my nose to like fix it. And now I'm like, as an adult, wow, I would have made a decision to fix my nose, quote unquote, based off something that like a 7-year-old said to me. Right. And so like how many
still living in that,
right? Like your operating system hasn't been updated. That's what I said earlier about like, what are those things you went through in puberty, your teenage years, your childhood that you adopted as law that are now running you as an adult? And if you don't go back and pull at those threads, you're going to make some decisions based off of what some dumbass people said to you who didn't know any better, right?
You have done some therapy.
Yes.
And I fucking love it.
Yes.
I'm in therapy every week.
Girly. Yes, absolutely.
How do we get straight men to get excited about therapy? Because they're missing out.
That population needs.
I ask on like dating apps. I'm like, are you in therapy? Like I just like.
It's an important question. Or just like doing something to like reflect. Yeah. Because, I wish therapy was far more accessible, but like, of course, even just like, what podcasts are you listening to? What books are you reading? The information's out there. Yes. Are you taking the time to reflect on who you are?
I went on a date recently and I asked the guy that question and he said, I know what it's all about with therapy. Like I know what therapy is all about. He said, I did a bit of it as a kid. Like I was an out of control kid. I'm like, well, you're probably an out of control adult if you haven't done therapy since. But anyways,
because also like I love when people like they did it for a little bit and they stop. I think that therapy,
that's fine.
It's fine, but I'm like, you should have a continuous relationship with reflection, right? Because there's a 7-year-old me, there's a 17-year-old me, there's a 27-year-old, and I've never been 38 before. It's gonna bring its own challenges. And
parts therapy? Have you done like the parts therapy?
I just started a couple weeks ago.
Who do you have in there? Who do you have at your table, your board table?
Oh my goodness! At my board, we're talking right now about rage. We're talking about my anger. What else did we get into? Heartbreak. We just were like. I can't recommend IFS enough, Internal Family Systems Parts Work. I can't recommend it enough because, again, that thing with what are the things that happened to you that you were told that you just adopted as law and you now need to go back. Like the biggest thing that came up for me was when I was 7, I felt so much tension and chaos in my little brain. Oh. And I thought I was the problem and have adopted and been chasing love all these years. And in this one session, it was like, no, you were queer. You were non-binary. Yeah. And the people around you didn't know how to deal with that. Yeah. They didn't know how to hold space for that. And so, of course, you didn't feel like you fit with them or with that.
There was pretending.
Probably. You were doing a lot of pretense because I used to get all these headaches and my teacher said I was faking. And it was like, no, my body reacts when I'm not feeling emotionally connected. And so it's like, I blamed myself for all of that and thought that I had to fix myself. Yeah. And in reality, going back to that 7-year-old and being like, no, baby, you were fine. Yeah. It was the people around you that just didn't know what to do with you, for better or worse. Right. And like how
freeing. Yeah.
Freeing. So freeing to like in my adulthood to like be able to take care of that part of myself and say, you can let those shackles go. You were not the problem. You are not the problem.
Totally. Oh, yeah. 7 to my all my shit was at like age 9. Like I swear
Yes,
those are just the hardest ages. And that
they
is kind of like
are.
pre-puberty, but it's still just like deeply challenging. A lot of my stuff with internal family systems and stuff like that is I have like an inner good girl and an inner rebel. And it's really funny that
Ooh,
I became like a sex podcaster
yeah,
in this space because there's part of me that deeply wants everyone to like me and like to actually not be the one that's talking about raunchy stuff publicly on air.
sure.
But then I also have this rebel that is like, fuck you to family, authority, to everyone, like wanting to prove people wrong. And so it's
Yes,
kind of fascinating. And what was freeing for me about that kind of modality was not being like, there's just Thea. There are all these different kind of archetypes sitting at a
yes,
table together. And
yes,
like sometimes different ones are leading, sometimes certain archetypes are like less healthy and like let's have
sure,
them not be leading the meeting.
sure.
But I find a lot of that the duality is very
It's so
fascinating
important.
about my inner people.
Yeah,
Um,
I found that with the what I learned about, I was always scared of rage. And let's, like
for
break it down. Like
sure.
rage in a male body and a black male body can be a very dangerous, it's
Mm,
taught to be a very dangerous thing,
mm.
but you have to have access to all your emotions
And releasing
and
them.
releasing them and finding a way to release them.
Yeah.
And the thing that I learned was that because of how I was brought up, I always saw anger hurt people.
Mm,
And the distinction that was
sure.
made for me was that like I care about people enough that when I'm angry, it's because something is wrong, and I
Yeah.
will never express it in a way that will hurt somebody.
Mm.
And that was really
Wow.
freeing. I was like, oh, I can trust myself.
Validating.
Validating.
That rage is okay
Yes,
sometimes.
that it's
Yeah.
okay, and that it
Yes.
is just my way of saying something is wrong. That a
For
line has
sure.
been crossed here, and
Yep.
you get to stand up for yourself. But you can also trust that even though that rage is showing up or anger is showing up, that it's not
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you're going to be violent to somebody or hurt somebody with it. That you also have the tools
Yeah.
to express it in a way that is respectful and loving and whatever. It's
Yeah.
like the duality gets
Yes.
to exist, and that's
Yeah.
freeing.
Yeah, I think we have to trust ourselves with anger and rage. Because what I
Yeah.
hear from a lot of women with anger is this fear that they'll like lose control and something
Yes.
will happen, like,
Yes.
yeah, violent or whatever nature. Like there's this fear of if it goes too far because it's
Yeah.
such an uncomfortable emotion in our bodies.
Yes.
I have a friend who's taken me through some rage ceremonies where we're like hitting and screaming and there's
Ooh, I
loud
love
music
that.
and it is so cathartic.
Yeah, I bet.
Highly recommend listening to some like angry loud music and punching
Yes.
shit.
Yes, or
I
a
think a
roller
lot of
coaster.
us have a lot of anger and it's but I really like what you said because what I find is that when those emotions manifest in my body as like that's how
Sure.
rage and anger feel in my body. It's very tense and I feel it. When I zoom forward and look back, there was always a reason. Like my intuition was like
Yes.
something is unjust
Yes.
here. And so
That's
it's
the
like
word.
actually
Something's
yeah.
unjust.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like and like actually letting your body lead that. Like be like even though I don't like how this feels and I want it to
Yes.
go away, there's something at
There's
play.
something here. There's something.
Thankfully, in my own therapeutic journey, I now don't react as quickly. I don't text, call,
Yes.
freak out,
Respond
email.
versus react. I love a response. Yes.
We're giving stuff 24 hours.
Yes, giving it space. Absolutely.
And then I have words to articulate what was unfair
Absolutely.
and what I'm going to do about
Absolutely.
it. So, yeah,
Yes,
the
that
process.
your anger doesn't mean that something has to be done right now. It
Yeah.
can just be, oh, something is off, something is unjust.
Yeah.
Let me explore what that is. And then once you know what it is,
Right.
then you find the appropriate way to express it.
Yes.
You know, sometimes it's not even expressing. It's like, okay, that person, that thing is no
Right.
longer part of this.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So pivoting a little bit because we have a
Please.
little bit more time.
Yeah.
Can you talk about kink at all? Like what some sexy, fun journeys have brought into your life? Has it been
Oh.
healing for you?
Oh my God, yes.
Pivot.
Pivot, hard pivot, which I, yeah.
Like we were covering a lot of ground today.
I love it. You know what? So many, because I started going to like sex parties and like parties with dark rooms and
Yes.
finding that so liberating to be in a space.
For sure.
Specifically when they are, there's a difference between gay spaces and queer spaces. And so specifically in queer spaces where you're seeing more gender expression, seeing people just like out loud, like just fucking is wild. I went to, there's also like this one, so sometimes there are parties that have a dark room and then there are specifically like sex parties. And I sometimes will just go to a sex party and sit on a couch and just like take it all in because I'm like, wow, this is so
My experience of sex parties thus far have not particularly turned me on.
Yeah.
It's more of like, this is fucking nuts, and I love taking in the stimuli. I'm also just like a voyeur. Like, I find it hot to watch people have sex. But the ones that I've been to, and I haven't been to a ton, and I'd like to go to more, it's more of like, yeah, I'm gonna just watch this unfold.
Yes.
Because I don't really want to be watched by a ton of people. Okay, and the parties that I've gone to, I found that like, if you're fucking, people are watching.
Yes, yeah.
So anyways.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't mind being watched in that. This, you know, like, I really enjoy one party I went to because they take your phones and everyone's naked and all that stuff. And so you just feel like people are allowed to be free. And I also, so this particular party, they were making you submit your photos and whatnot, which I at first was hesitant about because I was like, are they about to, like, you know, pick and choose who's
super
there? Basically.
hot,
Yeah. But it wasn't that at all. It was actually a really diverse population.
Good.
But what I discovered was there was a lot of enthusiastic consent. Okay. And I was like, oh, I bet that when you're submitting your name and your face, like, you are aware of how showing up with integrity in the space. It was such a subtle difference in other sex parties where it was like, oh yeah, everyone here is like asking for consent. Is this okay? I was like, wait, this is happening in a way that I'm not used to experiencing in some of these spaces. And I was like, oh, I think there's something to, you know, people offering their IDs or whatever and being like, okay, like, I'm here.
Right.
Because I've been in other spaces where, you know, you got to deal with some other wild people.
Yeah, no, for sure.
You know, but yeah, I think that, so like sex parties has been like just public play has been a fun kink to explore.
Definitely.
I've discovered, which I think is more, tell me, what is the difference between a fetish and a kink?
I have heard that a fetish is a requirement for like orgasm. So like fetishes aren't very common in that sense. That's the distinction I know.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Well, then this will be a kink, which is I've discovered that I have a foot kink.
Okay.
I learned this with my boyfriend.
Yes.
Which it's one of those things that, like, it's the beauty of like getting yourself sexually liberated and pulling at the thread.
Yeah.
Like, oh, maybe I've always had it, but just didn't allow myself because
now you're sharing it publicly.
Now I'm sharing it publicly. I know, I shared it on my phone. I'm like, I love feet.
The spectrum.
Like, yes, I'm like in the steam room and I'm realizing that I'm not looking at
that would be a good place to
I'm
be.
like looking at feet.
I'm looking at like bulges and arms and like
and I am fully head down, like looking at feet, like, oh, nice feet.
You know, nice. Permission to let people have foot fetishes and foot kinks. Like, I have encountered more men than I ever anticipated.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of, it seems a bit inflated with the whole like self-feet pics online. Like, I feel like that whole thing kind of inflated it. However, I actually am continuously surprised how consistent it is.
Yeah.
And the only thing I can correlate it to is like the kind of spectrum or duality we talked about of like the more taboo something is, the more it's going to be arousing for people.
Yes, fair.
And so I think feet are like technically dirty, you know, whatever kind
They're
of.
all, it has like people. Yes. I was talking to DB, of a DB about this and like how I was embarrassed about it because I think that there's a stigma that feet are dirty and like, but it's like, no, I actually.
Yet it's like the most common.
And like, wash your feet. Like, it's fine. It's lovely.
Yeah.
So discovering that, nipple stuff. I have one of my nipples pierced.
Fun.
Like discovering that like, I always liked it sucked, but like having it hit a little bit. And so just like, I don't know. I'm really down to like try things.
Totally.
And see what sticks and, you know, what doesn't. Now that I have, because I think once you know how to communicate, everything is kind of fair game because you know how to like say, oh, I want more of this or less of this.
Or take a pause.
Yes,
or,
exactly.
Yes.
And so you're more, you can get in the playground a little more than if you don't have access to your communication. Then like everything feels a lot scarier because you don't know how to talk about it.
Totally. I think it's hard for people newer on their journey to just hear like, just talk about it because I also want to share that like I spent years, and maybe you did too, of like not using my voice and just kind of like letting certain sexual acts like take their time and kind of even some sexual experiences where it wasn't non-consensual. It was just like, well, let's just get this over with.
Yeah, sure.
And then also just kind of the fear if the person I'm with is like bigger and stronger, there's this biological fear of like, could they harm me if I speak up that we're not even in touch with?
Absolutely.
And so I also want people newer on their journey to know that like, it might take a really long time for you to pause an actual sexual experience and be like, can we switch positions?
Yes.
Because that brings up so much fear of rejection, and like it's hard work to communicate.
Absolutely. Which is
So
why there are two things can I offer. One
yeah.
is I find it so important to, and sometimes it doesn't always work out this way, but to be communicating before the sexual act. To
Before people are turned
before
on.
people are turned on,
Practice.
like to like practice how you communicate with that person,
Mhm.
so that, and even like before getting, if we're on Grindr, like what are your turn-ons? What turns you on? What are the things you like? You don't have to tell me everything,
Yes.
but just so that we're getting in the habit of talking about this thing.
Definitely.
So that when we're in it, it's not the first time that we're broaching
That's a
the
great
conversation.
idea. Yeah.
And then also I find it difficult for people to identify their turn-on. So I have a little acronym. It's called.
You've got lots of acronyms.
I
it's
love
very
an acronym.
cute.
I love an acronym. It's BEMA, which BEMA is used to, like in ancient Athens, was like a place that orators spoke. So a lot of communication.
Cool.
So BEMA is body, environment, mood, accoutrements. So I always think about like, where on your body do you like to be kissed, touched, licked?
Yeah.
So like that's, you can identify your body parts.
Uh-huh.
Environment, where you want to have sex, the living room, the kitchen, the alleyway. Where's your place? The mood, do you want dirty talk, sexy talk? Do you want a playlist? Do you want it to be a D'Angelo playlist versus a Victoria Monet playlist? Do you want pink lighting or blue lighting? What are the vibes that you want to create? And the accoutrements, which are like, what are the props that you need? Do you need a strap on? Do you need a cock ring? Lube?
Yes, please. Extra.
So, and it's a lot to take in. I think sometimes to identify as a lot, but if you, in your notes app, just put BEMA, and as you discover it, just like right under the category. Oh, I discovered that I love sucking toes. Put that under body. I discovered that I really love this artist, Amber Mark, and that turns me on. Put that under your mood, and just like start to build out your little vocabulary, as I call it, your little encyclopedia that you can then start to share with partners, because a lot of people don't know what turns them on, and that is ground zero, of pleasure.
Yeah, I am a big Notes app girly as well. I don't have one updated right now, but if you're super sexually active and have lots of new partners like me, it's like I had a list of all the things I liked and didn't like.
Yes.
And what I was shocked to find, and I think that I and other people with this experience get to take responsibility, is like when I would send that list ahead of time, kind of like you mentioned on Grindr, sharing those things, the guys would accommodate a lot of them.
Yes.
Like they are good boys that have little memories, and they are like doing all the things because they know I like them and it gets me off.
Absolutely.
And so it's like I can't have resentment with a partner if I'm not sharing all of those things, like nobody's a mind reader. And I was blown away every time by the partner being like trying to accommodate all of them. It was very cute.
And that's life, honestly. Like people can't read your mind.
Right.
So you have to be able to share what you want or you don't want, what you like or don't like. And if you don't know, I think it's also okay to say, I don't know, but I'd like to explore.
Yes.
But like we can't be mad at people if they're not able to read our minds.
Yeah.
Like I think it gives us agency to be able to write those things down and say, oh, I like this, I didn't like that. Like that's our own hoe data we're gathering. Yes.
And it also took me all of my 20s to even be able to just definitively say I like something.
Yes,
honestly.
Absolutely. Like, sometimes it's a part of, I thought I hated my ass being eaten because I had a bad experience in my 20s. And then I had my ass eaten in my like early 30s and I was like, I love this. So,
the person plays a part in that.
Plays a huge part
for sure. Absolutely. And how comfortable you feel with somebody, how vulnerable it is, whether it's a first date or fifth date activity. You know?
Absolutely. It all, So, and you as a person change, right? And so like, you're going to evolve and you're going to grow and you're going to get more comfortable. And so that thing you didn't like at 27, you might like at 29. The thing you didn't like at 30, you might like at 35. And so allowing yourself to, with yourself and in your relationships, to continue to check in. It's that thing of like, we're not going to withhold and talk about it 20 years from now. Like, you get to always consistently and constantly be checking in and saying, do I like this? Do I want something else? Is there something else that I care for? And that muscle will just get stronger.
Definitely.
The more you work it.
Yeah, I feel like we're entering an interesting time of dating and, well, many things. But like, I feel like people's perception of... How do I articulate this? I was thinking about it this morning. Basically, I think people that are between like 20 and 40 right now, we didn't have examples of like open relationships and polyamory and sex positivity and role models for queerness and all of these things. But it's like kind of being broken down in front of us. And I think we're starting to realize we're not designed for a lot of those structures, but we have so much conditioning from media and from our young adult life that it's a really tough spot for millennials. Whereas I think Gen Z is like seen a lot and like they're pretty kinky and non-monogamous, it seems like.
We are the
it's
bridge.
Hard,
it's
though.
Hard. It's difficult.
Like even like I'm always combating like, you know, the Disney princess narrative bullshit of being swept off my feet. But I'm also like
Disney
this kinky solo poly girl, basically. But I find myself still holding on to like the fairy tale shit.
The Cinderella story. It's like, it's deep in there. And I think that's why we often just have to give ourselves grace. I always say, even like the mental health journey, we are the generation where a lot of our parents didn't have access to that. We do. And so our generation who are having kids will have kids who know what that is. But we're that bridge. And so I think the millennials do have to give yourself grace as you break through some of these things and figure these things out. And it won't be as quick as some of the Gen Z, but like you will get there and you will build that muscle and you will be better for it, you know?
Yeah, I love that. So before we wrap up, what are some of the main themes of your podcast? Is the intention to continue to share the messy stories and interviews?
We talk about relationships, love, and sex. And
great.
The intention is to create a safe, non-judgmental space that helps people live liberated lives.
Beautiful.
So, you know, my definition of hoe, because we say we're hoes there, H-E-A-U-X, is someone who commits to the liberation of themselves and others by thoughtfully interrogating their relationship to sex using curiosity, communication, and compassion.
I love
so that is, you know, it's how do we take the raunchy but bring in a lot of that mental health and bring in that curiosity, that compassion, and you know, destigmatize.
Okay, tell me something messy.
Tell me something messy.
And where can we find you for all the things?
You can find me on my website, BrandonKyleGoodman.com, on Instagram, Brandon Kyle Goodman, TikTok, Brandon K. Goodman. I'm there sometimes. But if you go to the website or Instagram, it'll lead you to everything. And the podcast is every Thursdays.
Beautiful. And stay in the loop for Ho Church.
Ho Church. This fall 25. Yes.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I feel like we could chat for a while.
I know.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into the episode today. Be sure to stay in touch with us on socials at Seggs Talk Radio Podcast. That is SEGGS Talk Radio Podcast.